Hey, we are coming to you not live.
Well, we're alive, but our broadcast isn't.
Yeah, broadcast. So, funny story. We've been trying to go live for what? The whole
20
show?
minutes.
We're
Yeah, the
supposed to
whole
be
show
there?
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, welcome to the breathing space. We decided to let's just record it, do this, and I think the universe has a way of giving us the exact example that we need, because today we're talking about how do we design a life that works, or what does that even mean? So before we jump into the content, my name is Kim Standeven. This is the lovely Morna Haste. We are your hosts of the Breathing Space and the co-creators of the Life Design Lab, which we've been talking about over the course of our shows, and we'll continue to talk about it. It's a beautiful space of women coming together from all across the world. And we talk about things just like this, what's working, what doesn't, how do we navigate life, how do we deal with the challenges that pop up, just like right now, right, Morna?
Just like right now.
just like right now.
And
so, yeah, go ahead.
Well, and I think that this is actually a beautiful example of some of the stuff I'm hoping we talk about over the next 20 or so minutes that, I was reflecting before our broadcast about this idea of creating a life that works. What does it even mean? And I think, as we were talking beforehand, that I think when things aren't working, it's when we get some insight into how we are, what's going on, what fuel have we got, what reserves have we got in our tank. And so I think this is actually a beautiful example, because Kim and I have been going live, I don't know, we've done this a lot of times. So when something goes wrong, it's like, okay, it's not that it's not a little moment of, what are we going to do? But we've got a plan B and a plan C, and we can just get on with it. Right?
Just get on with it.
Because we've practiced.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're masters at this, right? Oh, yeah, right. Yeah.
Put a thumbs up in the comments.
Yeah. So if you didn't tune into last week, definitely invite you to go watch the past shows, because last week we talked about how do we set aside all of the stuff that's on stage with us and be focused right in the moment. So we talked a lot about presence. And that was just, I got a lot out of that. And I hope you did too. But today, the question that we'd like you to sit with while we give ourselves some space to breathe, so we'll do that while we become present, is how do you know that your life is working? So let you sit with that. So how do you know that your life is working? Let you sit with that and invite you to take some breathing space, which I know Morna and I both need desperately in this moment. So giving you permission to close your eyes or lower your gaze and just take some deep breaths. Such a gift, because I know in my world, I hold my breath a lot. So this is just a permission to breathe deeply. Let your lungs expand and give that space. Exhale. Present to your body and anything that you're feeling within your body or outside your body that you can sense. Take this moment to ground, feel your feet on the floor. Or if you're sitting down, just feeling your body sitting in the chair. Just notice how you're arriving. Isn't that wonderful? Such a simple strategy to just kind of brush off any of the chaos that you've been feeling like we have. But I just feel like I'm a totally different person just by that 30 seconds. So
I needed
that. Yeah, me too. Oh. So I would love to start this off by let's answer the question for ourselves, Morna. So the question is, again, how do you know that your life is working?
Wow. What comes up for me is it's such a simple question, but actually it's a huge question. And the first thing that comes up for me is this idea of intention and awareness, because if we don't have anything to kind of measure, and I'm not talking about like a grade out of, my life's 9 out of 10 or whatever, I'm not talking about that kind of measurement. But if we have no benchmark for how to know if our life is working or not, then how do we know? And so I think for me, how I know whether my life is working or not is just when I have created space to pay attention to important questions, the kinds of questions actually that we explore in the lab every week. What do we want to show up for? What's important to us? How do we want to feel? And when I have some ideas about the answers to those questions, then I know kind of how to navigate and how to get, I hesitate to use the word back on track when life's not working, because, and I actually struggle to even find good language around how to talk about some of this stuff sometimes, because it's so feeling based. Like, we know in our bodies, right? Like it's sitting right there. But for me, it's a couple of things. I know my life is working when, particularly in regards to times like this week. So this week's been super challenging for me. And without going into the details, there are multiple things happening in my home life and family situation. I've been sick. I've got some really huge things coming up in our work and business, my own business and other pieces. And I've needed to access my reserves, my fuel tank this week. And it hasn't always been there for me. And that's a big clue that I haven't been paying attention to what I need as much as I could in the moments when it's not so important to pay attention to that. Does that make any sense, what I'm saying? You translate what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do, yeah. And if, ask questions and comments, let us know what you're getting from what we're saying as well.
Yeah. So just to summarize all of that, when I answer that question for myself, how do I know if my life is working? It's not like everything's fantastic, because that's actually not the nature of life. For almost every human being that I know, there are some aspects that are going really great. There are some aspects that aren't going so well. And often there are some things going on that are super challenging. And often these things are all happening at the same time. And we're kind of navigating these waters from moment to moment. So to summarize and to answer that question, I know that my life is working when I have the reserves and the skills and the practices to effectively deal with all of these different aspects of my life in the moment.
Oh, I love that. And I think a show on reserves may be in order, because what does that even mean? And what does that look like? Because each of us will fill up that tank or fill up those reserves in different ways.
Right. And actually, just before I answer, send the question back to you, what came up for me as you were saying reserves is if my car runs out of gas, have I got, what are they called? A jerry can? What are they?
Can.
Yeah.
Candidate, yeah.
Have I got a jerry can filled in the back, waiting, ready to go? Or am I going to be trekking down the highway? Well, maybe they did that in the olden days, but I got a cell phone. Hopefully it's charged. But if not, I might be tricky. Who knows? Have I got some reserves ready to go? And those reserves could be all kinds of things. Other people picking up the slack, or being able to go to bed for a few hours, getting rest, whatever. So I'm going to lob the ball back to you, Kim. How do you know your life is working? Kim's
Well, that's a bit of a loaded question. I love what you said about that it's not all wonderful, and the word supercalifragilisticexpialidocious just popped into my head. Mary Poppins.
And as you said that, I got an image of a unicorn fighting out rainbows.
Yeah, I love it. But I think that's what's so difficult, especially when we're navigating social media and all the information that's coming in, is that we're constantly bombarded with all of these positivity and everything's great and my life is awesome. And you can be in a really great working place in the storm. And I think for me, how I know my life is working is when I am grounded and solid in my knowing amongst the tornado. I am the calm of the center. When I'm feeling centered and grounded, when I could be unraveling. This week is a perfect example for me too. I've had a challenging week with my health. I've had to navigate, pain. I've had to juggle and prioritize what I thought was going to get done and what isn't getting done, and being okay with that and letting go. I mean, it's so complex, this idea of what's working. And I think the root of it for me is, do you know the language of your intuition? Do you know what that feeling is and how to describe that knowing in your body? Do you notice it? Do you acknowledge it? Do you ignore it? Because we tend to be on this roller coaster or this hamster wheel, and we'll just, set aside the signals and the taps on the shoulder. And for me, if we're doing that, it's not working, because you're not honoring your intuition.
Right. And
when our intuition is flowing, no, that's okay. When I got into this, when our intuition is flowing, this is my favorite topic, by the way, intuition. When it's flowing, that's the working cog. It's like, yeah, there's no blocks in this wheel of intuition. That's for me how I define it.
I love that. And I can actually think of some pretty big concrete examples in the last week where, because I think too, and I'm really curious about your experience of this. I think of intuition in a number of different ways. And sometimes for me, it's just feeling in my body. And one of the ways that I know my life is working is if I have a little bit of discernment and awareness around my intuition. So for example, say I have an interaction with my husband and I feel bad inside. Do I have a moment where I can actually look at that and work with that, or am I just reacting straight away? I'm taking that, whatever I'm feeling, and it's not going in a good direction with it.
Right.
Or am I actually able to kind of observe that feeling and go, okay, it's telling me something's not right here, and have just a moment to be able to make a conscious decision about what to do next. And I think that's part of what we were talking about next week.
Yes. Yes, next week. Yeah.
Or last week or the next week. I don't know. Whatever week, whenever.
Where are we?
Where are we? Exactly. But, being able to have that and that training and that ability to firstly notice what we're feeling and then do something constructive with it instead of just reacting to it, right?
Yeah. Being more like, I just love that. It's like taking a moment, a pause, just a second for ourselves to say, who do we want to be, and navigating ourselves. I love this working word. I think it speaks to me in terms of machines too. It's like when you have a humming motor, what does that sound like? Or even just in our bodies, if we notice that we're machines, like our hearts, if our hearts are working at its optimum, what does that feel like in our bodies, right? And I know we're kind of going right into the feeling piece of it, but I think I wanted to touch on what you said at the beginning about we don't have language, especially I think the English language, especially, we don't have all the words to describe what's actually going on for us. So taking that time to reflect on what's actually happening. Do I have words to describe this working feeling or this not working feeling? And exploring that and training ourselves. We had talked about that before, that all of this is about training. Are we ready? Like, do we have an understanding so that we can stop and make that next best move for ourselves?
Totally. And, I think that's why using the word working is so powerful, because it actually does take a little bit of work, a little bit of training, some skills to spend more time in the driver's seat, to spend more time navigating all of these different messages we're getting and deciding what to do with them from a more conscious space. And it's interesting, when I was studying nonviolent communication many years ago, we got this handout sheet, and if I can find it, I'll actually post it onto the page and post it into our group. And it was a whole sheet of different words that we can use to describe what we're feeling. And so, for example, we say things like, I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling happy. Actually, there are 50 other words to actually describe what we're really feeling. And those words don't necessarily cut it. To be able to bring language to our actual experience, you know, which I think is really powerful. Because, you know, if you say I'm feeling angry, well, there's probably quite a lot of stuff, quite a lot of words and feelings going on alongside that. And so, you know, again, using this word working in our jobs, in our careers, whatever we do, if we have a job, and if we don't, there are so many other aspects of life that relate to this. Actually, a much better analogy is what I was saying before this call. I think, you know, if I get up tomorrow and go and try and run a marathon, it's not going to work out for me because I haven't been training for a marathon.
Me either.
No, I've been training for some real good time on the couch. I think I could win at that one, but I haven't been training for a marathon. And I think, you know, how do you know your life is working? Well, you got to spend some time training for the kind of life you want and for how you want to show up, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that speaks to this whole idea that having things work takes conscious intention, it takes noticing, it takes work and effort. We unfortunately, humans have this path of least resistance thing going on. So we have to fight that to do things differently and train our brains and train our bodies. And that takes effort and work. And I think we get caught up in this, like, oh, it's too hard. Well, yeah, it can be hard to train for a marathon, but what is the outcome of it? What is the reward of it at the finish line? So, yeah.
Well, and I'd be remiss if I didn't add this piece in, especially because our audience is largely female, and you know, we work mostly with women, maybe 100%. I want to just talk briefly about self-compassion and self-forgiveness, and actually just relaxing into the nature of being human. And I think for women, sometimes we can get trapped, and I'm speaking from my own personal experience here, get trapped in, when we're training, when we want to be different, we want to change something, when we don't want to be driven by our habitual responses and we want to create something different, we can beat ourselves up when it doesn't go the way we want to go. When, I've been in the personal development, teaching, training, coaching, for the last, it's 20 years of my life, have dedicated my life to this work, and I'm on the journey alongside everyone else. You're on the journey alongside everyone else. There's not a day when I'm going to wake up and go, well, I'm perfect now, because that's not the goal anyway, by the way. I'm perfect now, I got it all figured out. So I'm a human. And so one of the biggest fundamental shifts, and maybe we've said this in every show, but I don't care, I want to say it in every show. One of the biggest fundamental shifts for me that superly helped me in a big way.
Superly helped me.
Yeah, is letting go of this idea of me being a project to fix, that we're somehow a project to fix, that we're actually whole and perfect just as we are. And that we're human beings, we're not going to get it right all the time. In fact, we might get it wrong a lot. And that the best, most beautiful thing we can do for ourselves in those moments is acknowledge that. Yeah. Give ourselves what we need. Give ourselves that love. Say in our own minds what we would say to a good friend who is experiencing something. And man, I would not say some of the things that sometimes I say to myself to any other human being.
Yeah. Right? Oh, I love that. I love that. I want to repeat it. You are not broken. You are not something to be fixed. You are not broken.
So let's just frickin' break up with being projects to fix.
Oh. Yeah. Because isn't that what it's like? Because we talked about last show about being in the present moment, and we're perfect in the present moment. Are there opportunities for continuous improvement? Absolutely. But if we look at ourselves as perfect right now, and we are just where we're supposed to be, there's nothing to fix. You know, maybe we need some grease here and there, but the parts are all there, right?
Right.
So,
And that fundamental worldview actually can help shift so many things and create different outcomes in all kinds of situations.
Thank you for saying that. I think that's such a beautiful message. So before we wrap up, Morna, I have one more question for us to answer. And what is your number one tip or practice for starting on this journey, or not even just starting, but just focusing on designing a life that works?
Oh my gosh. Well, I want to say come and join the Life Design Lab. I'm serious.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say it. You know, for those of you who don't know what Kim and I are up to, we have co-founded a Life Design Lab for women. And what we do is we take an hour every week with a beautiful circle of women from around the world, and we create this intentional space for ourselves and for each other to explore these big questions together. So to me, that's the number one thing we can do. And that's why we created it, so we could have that space. And then just riffing off that, and again, I think we mentioned this last week, we can create that space in a moment. Just take a moment to breathe. What am I experiencing right now?
Yeah, and that would be my tip as well, is listening to your intuition, not ignoring it. Really tapping into that, what is happening in my body. Even if you can't describe it with language, notice. We all know the no and the yes in our body. So noticing, and start defining for yourself where it is in your body, how it feels, listening to it, because the more we ignore it, the more the cogs are going to get stiffer and stiffer, and it's going to be more of a challenge for us. I just saw the light bulb just.
Wow. I mean, I'm dying. I'm desperate to talk about guilt, actually. Maybe that's what we'll talk about the next week. Yeah.
So what we have planned for next week is we're going to be talking about how do we get comfortable in the space of experimenting and trying on new things and kind of pushing ourselves to our edges. So that's next week. But we really want to let you sit with the question of, how do you know that your life is working? Sit with that, journal about it, reflect on it. And we'd love to hear from you. Let us know in the comments, obviously not live, but let us know in the comments what you thought of today's conversation. We are so excited, thrilled, pumped up about this show and this opportunity to share and be in connection. So please send us a message, send us a comment. That would be great. Any last words from you, Morna?
Just to say, I'm super grateful to be here, and that, you know, despite the 20 minutes of this not working, not being able to get the live broadcast to work, and that we are able to show up and have this conversation, because for me it feels like the conversation of my life. It really does.
Oh, right.
Right. And it's a super privilege to be able to come and share and be in the space every week. Okay, so let's go. Bye.
Let's go. Bye. Love you all. Take care.
See you next week. Bye.